For those of us who found the tapered wood beams and orderly shrubbery of New York's glitterized High Line to conjure the eerie sensation of walking through an architectural rendering, LentSpace provides a welcome alternative. This sculpture park, which opened to the public in late September, occupies a plot of land at the intersections of Canal, Grand, Sullivan, and Varick Streets, with an awkward trapezoidal shape that may explain why mega developer Trinity Real Estate was eager to loan it for the next few years to the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. Visitors can now enter the park daily from 7 a.m. to dusk through gaps in the chain link fence that borders 3 sides, as a condition of its private ownership, or through the 12 rotating panels of the 215-foot plywood fence designed by Interborough Partners. Inside, one will encounter still more chain link and metal fences, concrete foundations sprouting steel frames, ladders encased in concrete cubes, seemingly the materials of a new urban development, yet in fact some of the artworks comprising points and lines, an inaugural exhibition of work by Olivier Babin, Olga Chernysheва, Eli Hansen and Oscar Tuazon, Graham Hudson, Tobias Putra, Ryan Tabor, and Corbin Walker. On the day ArtReview visited the park, several pedestrians were overheard struggling to delineate artwork from infrastructure, while others stopped to read, play guitar, and eat lunch beside the boxed tree nurseries. We stood about with LMCC curator Adam Kleinman to talk about his conception for the park and for points and lines.
I started approaching this as we developed this idea that the site is basically this series of zones or thresholds. So I started looking at artworks that look at similar relationships, and particularly because the way we've made a fence that's not a fence, it's a piece of furniture, it blurs the boundary, or it locks it, looking at artworks that both occupy a sort of dual position in either precluding but also affording access. And to this end, invited a group of artists for the sculptural exhibition, particularly people whose practice was in sort of this direction, particularly looking at artists who worked in construction materials and vocabularies, coming not directly, but sort of the progeny of the sort of Rosalind Krauss sculpture in the expanded field idea of blurring the distinction between art and architecture, blurring the distinction between landscape, non-landscape, etc., and assembled these groups of artists. Likewise, too, the site is temporary, so the materiality of that and expressing the temporary nature was important, so everything is made out of plywoods, steels, chain link fences. Likewise, all of the artwork borrowed the same formal vocabulary: raw steel, concrete, wood, etc., etc.
This prevailing formalism can seem out of sync with the last wave of public art, which emerged in response to both the plaza style of the 1960s and 1970s, epitomized by the Calders, Picassos, and Moores still lining the avenues of major cities, and by Calder's aptly modernist neglect of ever visiting the plaza in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where one such sculpture would come to rest, and by the useful art programs of the 1980s, which found artists like Alice Aycock, Scott Burton, and Ellen Zimmerman, as Tom Finkelpearl notes, working with design teams on user-oriented public installations. Claims of total disavowal of city associates in the case of the former, and the instrumentalization of art in public, the latter, yielded an increased awareness of the social and economic forces attendant to both user and site, a rhetoric of the site-specific that itself has spawned templates for artistic production that are problematically well-suited to the increasing globalization of the art world. Rather than eschew these precedents, Kleinman's artwork suggests subtle rereadings, from Putra's 6,500 square feet of chain link fence, which in the artist's characteristic fashion will in the future support a cinema screen, to Corbin Walker's squat, aluminum, zinc-plated steel fence, the height of which is almost that of the diminutive artist. The sculptures operate more reflexively than historiographically, supporting a shift of the primary site, as noted by theorist Myung Kwon, beyond locational and institutional circumstances and into the discursive realm.
Olivier Babin's piece, which is 5 inches, is really also formally playing with what is public sculpture, what does it mean to be a monument or an icon. Maybe something very, very slight is just as powerful. There's a lot of place and scale, from the 6,500 square foot piece by Tobias to a 800 square foot piece by Eli Hansen and Oscar Tuazon to a 5-inch piece. it's actually meant as the synthesis of all of the show, and the actual line, the property line of the site itself that we've been discussing is marked at a point in which it intersects a tree, and that's where that 5-inch spike, almost as like a ceremonial or a sort of proclamation that's been torn off, rests.
For the first time, it's the first time that I make a bronze sculpture, and the bronze copy is lighter than the original, because like this type of steel that we use for making this kind of carpenter nails is like much heavier than bronze. So, and bronze is like way too weak to be hammered. So technically, we have to use the original to make a pre-hole in the branch and then put the real nail.
The tree that it lives in is within the site and is therefore actually a private tree, and it's reaching over, following the sun, into the actual public space, the One Pablo Duarte Square, and its far branches are actually touching a public tree. So the moment in which these two trees want to meet is where this spike is calling attention to, this little 5 inches.